Good afternoon. Picture this, if you will, in the dark. In a small room under the Yale University gymnasium, an undergraduate student named Matthew Barney is momentarily suspended on a ramp, leaned steeply up against the wall. Wearing a loose gray t-shirt, worn-in jeans, and Nike sneakers, Barney grips an elongated drawing tool in his right hand. Having just pressed play on the video cameras he set up on tripods, he strains the weight of his 20-year-old body against the self-imposed harness system that pulls him back, desperately reaching his homemade utensil out towards the far wall. In some attempts, he will successfully make his mark. In others, he'll fall just short. This strange and fleeting scene constitutes drawing Restraint 2, seen here, one of the 6 studio experiments made by the artist between 1987 and 1989. The series would establish the young Barney as an international contemporary art world sensation. Today, I will investigate the nature and meaning of athletic experience as it informs those early studio projects, contending that the specific and often paradoxical ritual of practice, rather than that of athletic performance, is the vehicle which drives a deeper and more nuanced understanding of this work. The term practice holds varied significations depending on the context of endeavor. Most germane to my interests are the fields of art practice and athletic practice. As exemplified by Hans Nemuth's iconic 1950 photograph of Jackson Pollock for Life magazine, an image which helped to carve out and define the term action painting, an artist's performance may not always be fully distinguishable from their practice. These very same terms, practice and performance, by contrast, are very clearly delineated within sport. Unlike our expectations in the field of art, we have come to know athletic performance as a singular climax delivered before an audience and divorced from any notion of its own preparation. Using Matthew Barney's Drawing Restraint 1 through 6 as a vehicle with which to do so, I will consider the shifting relationship of practice to performance, both within art and athletics, ultimately arriving at a reconciliation between the two. While abundant scholarship highlights Matthew Barney's history as a championship-winning high school quarterback, it more often than not serves to flatten the meaning of his experience within athletics. By describing the artist as a football-playing jock and muscle man, critics ultimately overlook the distinct implications of practice and performance for the athlete. Let us instead take an alternate approach from the inside out, considering the repetition and physicality of practice rather than the performative spectacle of the big game as Barney's true site of exploration in the making of Drawing Restraint 1 through 6. Advertising campaigns can offer a clue. Having long helped establish the sports star's mythic, visual marketing strategies can also shed light on the divide between the expectations of practice and performance for the athlete. Nike's 2007 advertising campaign, seen here, featured NBA star LeBron James. Superimposed into an abyss of black darkness, his arms and head thrust back in exaltation, or perhaps a mighty crucifixion, the text above our hero reads simply, "We are all witnesses." Nike affirms the obvious. Our athletes are our modern saviors. But the brand also hints at something deeper and more complex. Unlike practice, performance, above all, needs to be seen in order to be qualified. Let us consider a fact now fundamental to understanding athletic experience, one that we all know but never really probe. Athletes spend only rare moments in competition. Close to 99% of their time is devoted to a torrent of self-regulation. What is the nature of this practice? Can it exist for its own sake? And what trace does it leave? Athletic practice denies not only an audience, but the binary terms of winning and losing. It is comprised of thousands of private hours, repeating often grueling tests to build strength, skill, and endurance. Unlike the performance of competition, during which the athlete confronts an opponent, in practice, the athlete confronts their own inadequacies in an attempt to patch, strengthen, move toward, but never quite reach realized potential. Physically and psychologically, as any athlete will attest, a life in sport is less involved with the big game than with its infinite rehearsal. For any athlete, but very concretely for the football athlete, as was Barney, to draw from practice is to draw from an engagement with restraint. As these drawing Restraint 5 stills illustrate, Barney's studio actions literally mime the rituals of the practice field within the confines of his studio walls. In this sense, the young artist has retraced his recent muscle memory to quite literally draw practice itself. Failure can be an interesting and impressive act. The being of almost there, but just short, is fundamental to athletic experience and deeply formative to drawing Restraint 1 through 6. While Barney cites the potential for failure as a driving force in his early work, it's easy to envision the reverse, that failure enables the constitution of potential. Barney himself has said, it's as though failure will make the audience feel something that they cannot bear to feel. In a profound reversal of societal expectation, which marks failure as the point of termination, Barney has harnessed its generative power as a point of departure. There are two kinds of failure present in drawing Restraint 1 through 6. First, it enacts the millions of moments that Barney, as all athletes must do in practice, strives and falls short in hopes of making his mark. In occasionally falling off the ramp or being unable to reach the far wall against the strain of his harness system, Barney embodies his own ceaseless struggle, weaving an innate futility into the fabric of the endeavor. Second, Barney struggles against his own personal failure to succeed in football. While he was a star quarterback growing up in Boise, Idaho, Barney didn't have the requisite skill to pursue the sport in college. His formal athletic career ended in high school. Barney thus relives his own personal failings in returning to the sport as subject, coloring drawing Restraint 1 through 6 with a nostalgia and a loss not normally attributed to the work, and ultimately suggesting Barney's longing for the consistently punishing and satisfying ritual of practice, so diligently recreated in drawing Restraint 1 through 6. I have argued that repetition of self-inflicted pain is its own form of practice. Ultimately, administering the compulsive, internalized, fitful phenomena of practice upon themselves, the athlete is thus necessarily both the victim and the executioner of their own bodies, to quote Foucault. Barney's struggle again and again to reach the far wall, or in this case, the ceiling, with his drawing utensil depicts the unwavering, nearly violent urge to betray one's own body with the wants of discipline, or at least to reconcile its simultaneous capacity for both pain and pleasure. Astutely aware of the manner in which the body functions in training to generate form, Barney again drew his experience within football to inform his curious studio practice. Only through a sublimation of violence, enacted through resistance and through repetition, was Barney able to break down muscle and create form in his body and in his studio. This ritual, referred to as entropy, hypertrophy, and even alchemy by the artist himself, is an inherent paradox of practice, an internalized masochism whereby the body is systematically weakened in order to become stronger, where muscle is being built up through the very exercises that break down its tissue. While often referred to as performative work, drawing Restraint 1 through 6 is more accurately described as video. This is an important distinction as it reflects upon the recurring practice-performance dialectic. Barring drawing Restraint 5, Barney never performed the training ritual for a present viewer. He left only marks, frantic and childlike, as evidence of the action. By exhibiting only the video and video stills of this process, Barney enables his audience to view an invisible thing, practice, without turning it into its opposite, performance, and thereby without compromising its impact. Without any melodramatic trappings, this strategy of removal allows the audience to bear witness to a ritual which qualifies itself through its very refusal to be seen. Barney completed Drawing Restraint 1 through 6 in 1989 as he was transitioning from a life dominated by athletics. Since that time, Barney has periodically expanded upon the series, most recently having completed Drawing Restraint 18 in 2010. Reflecting his success in the art world, these drawing restraints have exponentially higher production budgets than their predecessors. While the series has continued to engage bodily resistance to force, what is most telling are the ways that the subsequent work has departed from the initial series, made out of view in that Yale basement. A comparison between the early work and 2005's Drawing Restraint 10, 11, and 12, seen performed here in Kanazawa, Japan, and Seoul, South Korea, throws into sharp relief the pervasiveness and value of practice in the early work of the 20-year-old athlete turned artist. Drawing Restraint 6 and Drawing Restraint 10 were made 16 years apart and enact the same repetitive trial, reaching to make a mark on the ceiling over and over using the resistance of a trampoline. Yet the discrepancies between the two are telling. His mini trampoline has shifted to a room-size one, and the gymnasium basement has become a slick glass box. As stunning an appearance as the latter environment provides, it lacks the messy, eager clumsiness of Drawing Restraint 6. In making the earlier work, Barney tapped the kinesthetic and emotional vocabulary of his still recent experience in athletic practice, and that immediacy feeds their charge. Failure was not the condition of the early work, it was the work. By using his body as an instrument in Drawing Restraint 1 through 6, Matthew Barney may be understood not only as processing his thousands of hours of ritualized practice, but also as collapsing its varied forms. His explosion of physicality, aided by self-imposed restraints, into his white studio walls concentrates artistic and athletic matter and energy. The explosion becomes an implosion. Without an understanding of the centrality and complexity of practice, this polysemous reading of the work is nearly impossible. In his 1990 journal, seen here, Barney concludes an entry in all capital letters, writing simply, "The artist is the athlete." Indeed, understanding practice can expand our reading of the scope of Barney's entire Drawing Restraint series. But the converse is also true. In Drawing Restraint 1 through 6, Matthew Barney has expanded our understanding of the meaning of generative practice. Thank you.